12. Think about a 12-year-old today. They're in middle school, arguing about screen time, stressing over homework. By every law and every ounce of common sense, they're a kid, a child. So the idea of a 12-year-old becoming a parent, yeah, that's not just frowned upon today. It's illegal. It's treated as abuse. Full stop. And yet, for almost all of human history, becoming a parent that young was completely normal. Now, hold on. Don't freak out. Ancient people weren't monsters. They loved their kids just like we do. But here's the thing. The entire world they lived in, age, growing up, what it even meant to be an adult, all of it worked totally differently. So let's break it down, properly. Let's start with biology. Because here's the wild part. Biology hasn't changed. Not one bit. Your body doesn't know what year it is. It doesn't care about school or labor laws. The human reproductive system runs on a schedule that got locked in millions of years ago. And back then, that schedule made perfect sense. Today, puberty for girls usually kicks in between ages 8 and 13. For boys, around 9 to 14. Now, ancient people, with less food and harder lives, hit puberty a little later. But we're talking a few months, not years. Bottom line, teenagers have been biologically able to have kids for as long as humans have existed. That part's not the mystery. The mystery is everything around it. So let's keep going. Now, let's talk about life expectancy. Because this one, people get it so wrong. You've heard it, right? Back then, people only lived to 35. And everybody pictures adults dropping dead in their mid-30s. Nope, that's a myth. Here's what actually happened. That 35 number is an average, and it got dragged way down by babies. Because a huge number of kids didn't make it. Anywhere from 30 to 50% died before age 5. So when you average in all those tiny lives lost early, you get 35. Even though most adults who survived childhood lived into their 50s and 60s. So the real question isn't, how long did people live? It's, how long did you live if you made it to your teens? And the answer? Pretty long, honestly. Not far off from us. But, and this is huge, nothing was guaranteed. Disease, accidents, famine, violence. Death was always lurking. So imagine you're 15. If you decide, I'll wait till I'm 25 to have kids, you're gambling. Gambling that you'll still be alive, that your partner will be, that life won't fall apart in the meantime. And back then, that was a bad bet. Okay, now let's talk about childhood itself. Because our whole idea of childhood, it's brand new. The notion that kids should spend ages 6 to 18 in school, protected, playing, slowly getting ready for adulthood, that's only about 200 years old. It came from factories, from school laws, from a modern economy that needs educated workers. But before all that, childhood looked nothing like that. Kids worked early. By 6 or 7, they were hauling water, watching younger siblings, gathering food. By their early teens, they were doing full-on adult work, farming, hunting, weaving, raising babies. So becoming an adult wasn't some sudden leap. It was a slow climb. A 13-year-old back then had already been working beside grown-ups for 7 years. They knew how to grow food, run a household, care for a child, because they'd literally been doing it their whole lives. Yeah, sure, the human brain isn't fully done cooking until your mid-20s. That's real. But ancient societies couldn't afford to wait around for a fully developed brain. And honestly, the jobs they needed done didn't require it. Now, here's a big one, marriage. Because when we hear married at 13, we picture 2 kids, alone, trying to run a home. And that's just wrong. In most old societies, marriage wasn't really about 2 individuals. It was about families. It was an alliance, a partnership between whole family networks. So that 13-year-old, she wasn't off on her own. She was surrounded. Grandmothers, aunts, mothers-in-law, older sisters, a whole crew of experienced women. And they did the heavy lifting. They taught her how to feed a baby, how to handle a fever at 3 a.m., how to read what a crying infant needs. She was never alone. And this is why all our modern worries, she's too young, she doesn't know enough, she can't support a baby, mostly melted away. Because she had a built-in support system. A whole village, literally. Ever heard of the grandmother hypothesis? It's this idea that grandmothers are the secret weapon of human survival. They shared food, they shared wisdom. And studies show grandkids with grandmothers around actually survived better. That family structure wasn't a backup plan. It was the whole system. Now here's something that surprises people. Ancient folks did not all rush to have kids at the youngest age possible. Take the Hadza in Tanzania,
one of the most studied hunter-gatherer groups alive today. Their average age for a first baby? Around 19. The San in southern Africa? Also about 19 or 20. And these are the groups living closest to how our ancestors actually lived. So that 12-year-old parent image? Way more extreme than the norm. So where did super young parenthood show up the most? Farming societies. Specifically, ones with lots of food, dense populations, and a big reason to marry early, money. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part, the economics. In farming communities, kids were assets. They worked the land. And daughters? Daughters were often bargaining chips. Marry off a daughter, and you'd seal an alliance with another family. Money, land, loyalty, all locked in. And the younger the bride, the longer that alliance lasted, the sooner the grandkids arrived to inherit the farm. This wasn't hidden or secret. It was out in the open. Bride prices, dowries, negotiations. The age of the bride was literally part of the deal. And look, this feels gross to us. It should. Treating young girls like property caused real, lasting harm. It still does, in places where child marriage happens today. Understanding why it happened is not the same as saying it was okay. It wasn't. We're just trying to understand it. Now let's zoom out. Because early parenthood wasn't just a personal choice. It was math. When 30 to 50% of kids die young, a family that waits and has just 1 or 2 children, they might end up with no surviving descendants. But a family that starts early and has many, better odds someone makes it. Cold? Yeah, but that's the arithmetic of survival. And here's the kicker. As soon as child survival improved, through the 1800s and 1900s, early marriage started fading. Fast. Families could finally have fewer kids later and still know they'd make it. The biology never changed. The world changed. And the rules followed. So, does any of this mean early parenthood is okay today? No, absolutely not. And here's why. Every single thing that made it work back then? Gone. That giant family support system? Gone. Most young parents today are on their own. Kids used to be helpful workers, now they're expensive. And school? Dropping out to have a baby as a teen has lifelong consequences that just didn't exist before. The brain still finishes developing in your mid-20s. Back then, family filled that gap. Today, there's no one to fill it. So what was once smart survival is now genuinely harmful. Not because biology flipped, because the world flipped. And that, right there, is the whole answer. Ancient humans became parents young because biology made it possible. Because waiting was risky. Because kids grew into adults slowly and naturally. Because family carried the load. Because the math of survival demanded it. And because none of the modern things that make it harmful existed yet. That 12-year-old parent in the ancient world, they were not the same as a 12-year-old today. Same biology. Completely different world.
Because the number 12 didn't mean what it means now. Parent didn't. Childhood didn't. And once you get that, you finally understand why people back then made choices that seem impossible to us now. They weren't wrong. They weren't foolish. They were just living in a completely different world.